think I'm a writer because I love to read books, and I love the stories that my mother told me when I was very young. I admired the writers of books, and I thought, these people give me pleasure, and I wanted to write too. Henry was a hind-leg walker. It started with chasing flies, and he decided he liked that way of prancing. He even danced to the music on the stereo when his folks weren't watching. Of course, Henry chased mice on his 4 feet, but when he felt full of the old pizzazz, he stalked around on his back legs, switching his tail for balance. "Some smart cat," said the kid and the woman. "Idiotic cat," said the man. Still, Henry pranced to please himself. One time, they were all up at the mountain cabin for a weekend of cross-country skiing. "You ought to try skiing, Henry," said the kid, and he decided to make a little pair of cross-country skis and poles for Henry. Yes?
Did you have a cat like Henry when you were little?
I didn't have a cat just like Henry when I was little, but I had a very dear cat. Her name was Cucumber, and she was a long, skinny, white cat, and I thought that she looked like a peeled cucumber. But then, since I've lived in Steamboat Springs, I had a cat kind of like Henry, and she didn't ski, but I thought if she were accidentally left behind at the house and the snow was too deep to walk through, I knew if she had some skis, she would ski out. She looked all Siamese, and she was my very dear dusky cat. Eric?
When did you start to write?
Well, I must have been about 8 years old, and I didn't have a very good place in the house to write, so I wrote out under a bush in the yard, and wrote on note paper like you would, and I had a box, and I dug a hole under this bush. I was writing Alana and the Fairy, and when I got tired of writing, I just put it in the box and put it in the hole in the ground and cover it up. Then in college, I studied journalism and worked as a newspaper reporter for a few years. And then I married a reporter, and we started having children. I had Michael and Gregory, and I wasn't working on the newspaper anymore. I thought I'll stay home till these kids are in school. Well, here's 2 little boys standing around saying, "Tell me a story." And I didn't know very many stories by heart, so I made up stories for them. I thought, well, I want to write, so why don't I try writing down these stories that I'm making up for Mike and Greg? So at night, after they were in bed, I would type on these stories and send them off to book publishers, and they'd say, "No, we don't want it." I'd send them to magazines, and they'd say, "No, we don't want it." After a while, finally, a story, The Magic Teapot, Humpty Dumpty's editor said, "Yeah, we want it, and we'll pay you $50 for it." My first book was not published until, well, it took about a year after I wrote it for it to get published. So I was 30 years old by the time it finally was published. And I've been writing for children ever since. Emily.
How do you get your ideas?
I sit or stand at the ironing board, and I have a notebook there, and I'll iron idiot stuff, you know, pillowcases, and it's as if my hands are doing some manual thing of repetition, that my mind will flow free. And that began when my boys were little, and they would catch me at the ironing board, and they would say, "Tell me a story." So I got used to making up stories while I iron. I also get ideas from things I feel strongly about, things I love. whether it's that big old house that I grew up in, so I wrote about it in the Katie John books, or cross-country skiing, or cats. I put those two together in cross-country cat, or ballooning. I love to go up in a hot air balloon. And my editor said, well, doesn't that cat do something more? Henry had skied, but she says he's some smart cat. Doesn't he do something else? And I told my son Michael, who was living nearby at Clark, and he said, well, Mom, you love to go ballooning. Why don't you put that cat up in a balloon? And Michael and I looked at each other. He's grown up by then, of course. And we said, Hot Air Henry. And we got the name of the book right away. So that grew out of love of something, love of ballooning. That's one way to get ideas. You back here.
What gave you the idea of writing Audubon Cat?
One September day in late September, I just went for a walk in the woods and mountains and meadows near my house, just with all my senses open. Eyes, ears, nose, taste, eating berries, to see what all happened that day. And it's all reflected in Audubon Cat. Now, I had a cat who would love to catch birds, and she was always watching the birds at our bird feeder. But I would run out and shoo the birds away if I thought she was about to pounce. And she wasn't a good hunter, and she never did catch. And, well, I shouldn't say never. She caught a few slow juncos, but hardly ever caught a bird. So that became my heroine, of a cat who wants to be a mighty huntress. But instead, eventually, what does she end up getting caught by? Yes?
An owl.
An owl. And she thinks, oh, the disgrace to be eaten by a bird. Yes.
There's music in your books. How do you get that there?
Well, I wanted a storyteller's rhythm whenever I wrote a story. But music is very important in my life and has been since I was little. I played piano and violin, and I love to dance. I love to collect Dixieland and blues, jazz records. Well, when I thought of Cross Country Cat, I thought he is some smart cat. He's a cat, like in jazz language, a really smart, knowing person. So it had a double meaning. So I really thought this cat ought to have some music in the book. And I wanted a song that you kids would know. And I thought of This Old Man. You know, this old man, he played one. He played knick-knack on my thumb with a knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. This old man came rolling home. But you can't say words? No. So he goes, yow me yowl, yow me yowl, yow me yow me yow me yowl. And his skis went step and slide over the snow in perfect rhythm. In Hot Air Henry, do you know what the song is that the cat sings when he's up in the balloon? He sings, sailing, sailing. I mean, he sings to that tune, over the bounding main. Only he doesn't sing that. He sings, yow me, yow me, yow me, yow me, yow. And that's his song in that book. Oh, yeah. Is that Levi?
I like Henry books. Are you going to make any more?
Levi, I'm glad you asked, because I and the artist have made another book about Henry. And it's called High Wire Henry. Now, this began because the first thing I wanted to be, before I wanted to be a writer, is I wanted to be a high wire walker in a circus. And when I started writing this book, I tried to make it about Henry in a circus and walking a high wire. That story just would never come right. So far, the artist, Eric Ingram, is just now finishing the finished art for High Wire Henry. but he always sends to me sketches of his storyboard, and this is his plan for the whole book of High Wire Henry. And can you see that there is a dog? Can you see there's a little dog? Now, some of you know Henry, and some of you know the man. How do you think Henry feels if the man gets a dog?
Oh.
Yeah?
Well, kind of jealous.
Jealous. And?
Disgusted.
Disgusted. Yes?
Angry.
Angry. Every one of those things. Let me show you the beginning of these drawings. When the man brought a puppy in, Henry went out and stayed out. That night, he climbed the apple tree and crouched on a branch. Huffing his fur against a drizzle of rain, he looked through the window. Inside, the puppy played while they all watched, the kid, the woman, and the man. The puppy caught a ping-pong ball in his mouth, spurted it out, and pounced after it. "Isn't that cute?" exclaimed the man. "He's cute as a button." "Now," Henry moaned, "what was so cute about a button?" "What shall we call him?" asked the woman. "I know," the kid said, "let's call him Buttons." Henry didn't care. For all he cared, they could call that pup Rosebud. And so the story goes on. And do you think that Henry and the man are going to be friends by the end of the book? You'll just have to read and see, but I think so. He might, I don't know. You'll have to see whether he makes friends with the puppy. Yes?
How long does it take you to write a book?
Well, it depends on the book. If I'm writing a picture book story like Cross Country Cat, that would take me about a month, maybe 2 months, because I do it over. Do you guys ever have to do your papers over?
Mm-hmm.
Join the club. I have to rewrite and rewrite. And when I wrote Cross Country Cat, I didn't get it right the first time. I hardly ever get it right the first time. If I were writing a book that's in chapters, maybe 10 chapters, a junior novel, that might take me 8 to 9 months. I may have to do research for it. I really had to do research on balloons when I decided to write, because I was just all agog about being up in the air and didn't really pay attention to how the burner worked. So I had to go back and get in the balloon again. There was one out at a shopping center here, and watch of how you fired the burner to see if Henry really could reach that burner cord, you know, with his claw to turn on the fire. Now you have to understand, I'm not writing 8 hours a day. What I'm doing is every morning, 5 mornings a week, and then I think about it in the bathtub or driving down the road or on the ironing board some other time in the day. That's what all goes on when I say a month to 2 months to 8 or 9 months for the longer books. But it's my main job. I like children, and I like to think about the things you think about. I'd rather do this for my work than anything else. Quickly, Henry threw away his ski poles. While the car was stopping, he pulled his feet loose from his skis and shoved the skis under the snow. He thrashed and floundered in the drifts. "Help me, owl!" he cried piteously. After all, the man had come back for him. Let the man think he had saved Henry's life. Some smart cat.